Hello and welcome to the Repurpose Your Purpose podcast. My name is Aurora Minigallo, and Repurpose Your Purpose is a program and a podcast about changing careers and doing work you love. Just a quick reminder, if you like this podcast, if you like this episode, please subscribe to whatever platform you're listening or watching this to, like the episode, and check out what I do. Subscribe to the newsletter at repurposeyourpurpose.com. All right, so today's episode is inspired actually by a conversation I recently had with a client, and is really for all of you listening to this who are in the middle of a career change, who are in the middle of a transition, and feel particularly unsettled by what is happening in the country and in the world. What do I mean particularly unsettled? So it's difficult anytime, in any place, anytime, to move forward if you're not sure what you want to do next. But when your inner uncertainty is mirrored outside by the world uncertainty, and in fact might even be dwarfed by the upheavals and craziness of what's happening right now, I feel like we need to have a little bit of a talk, how to go through this moment that is beyond my usual approach to how to change careers when you're not sure what you want to do next. So anybody can of course listen to this episode and find something helpful from it, but I'm really gonna talk to you specifically if you are in a state of uncertainty on a personal level. So as I was talking to my client, something came up, which is the idea of resting, taking a break from everything that we're personally going through, being able to recharge, recenter, come back to wisdom, and move forward. And something that occurred to me is that we keep talking about and expecting from ourselves to act as if this was still the old world, essentially. And I think I'm not the only one to really sense that things are changing and we don't know where we're going to land. But I have a definite sense that this is not a blip. This is something that's being unmade, that will be remade, transformed. We're in a pivotal moment, but it is not just an interruption from which we're gonna go back to our lives or the world as it used to be. If you have a similar, whatever your theory about it is, if you have a similar sense, I would say that it compounds your state of uncertainty. And if you try to take head on this state of uncertainty the way you might have done, let's say 2 years ago or 10 years ago or 6 years ago, you're going too fast. Now, fast might be fast in the sense of how fast in time terms, but what I mean is like fast internally, that we need a little bit of reflection right now. And this is why we really go through life based on a sense of identity and narratives. The way we see the world, we see ourselves, we see other people, we have these constructions in our mind. And the brain is always creating patterns, right? All of these things are very, very helpful, except when there's an abrupt shift or a very, very fast change. And then it becomes difficult because we cannot rely on the same identities and patterns and stories as before. It does, sometimes these things are for the good, if positive, right? Like I don't know, a very common example, think of when you go from single to a relationship, or engaged to married, or childless and become a parent, or a grandparent, or maybe you graduate from college. There are many times in life where we might have a shift in identity, and sometimes it's we can have a hard time with that, right? Because our brain has to readjust to the fact that, oh wow, now it's a different me, like I have to do things differently, like who am I now? But it can be positive, it can be growth, it can be really it can be an expansion. Sometimes these things happen because of tragedies, because of something that we didn't expect, that really take away our certainties. Like if we lose somebody close to us, if we lose a job, if something we were counting on disappears. I mean, it can be, that can also become a way to grow, but of course in a more painful way, right? So now what I think is happening is that not only some of us are going through a transition that's on a personal level, but there is a collective world transition that's happening as well. The two things are compounding, and that's probably why it's so hard for you to go through your transition, or why it might feel so overwhelming right now. So it could really be helpful to recognize that the first step might be to sit a little bit with, what does this all mean to you? What does it mean? And not so much from an intellectual mind, I have to have the right philosophical explanation for it all, or political theory, but really from like a heart opening, what does this all mean? When I've been through some tough times, it really helped me to have a view of it that I don't want to say was good, I want to say that clicked, that made me inside, it made me feel like that made sense to me. So I don't want to tell you what that view should be, for you, but just as an example, sometimes it's helpful for people to, for example, think, I'm here to learn some lessons, and every challenge in my life is a way I'm learning, and I'm expanding. That can be helpful sometimes for people. For some other people, that's not helpful at all. That's actually can feel very like victim blaming, or too much pressure, right? And it can be actually more helpful to just see things as, excuse my language, but shit happens sometimes, and this time it just happened to me, right? So that can provide sometimes some relief. Anyway, I can go on forever, right? There's many different ways you can see it. The point here is not to choose the one that your mind wants to choose, or to feel compelled to have a certainty theory of why things are happening. But my invitation is simply to contemplate a little bit the meaning you're giving what's happening in your life or in the world or whatever that's like hitting you, right now, and then let new insights come if that's not helpful. And this might also be the time for some deep conversations or deep readings or discovering something that some new ways of looking at things. When we give space to these meanings and these conversations, it's not just sort of like an exercise or an activity to do. Is something that can help us be with our own feelings. Because when we resist what's happening and we have a view that it shouldn't happen, and we don't want to accept it. Now, I don't mean resign ourselves to it. I don't mean going along with whatever, but I mean like we cannot be with it as it's happening, letting our feelings be present, letting ourselves feel our feelings. We essentially stop the flow of life. We've stopped the flow of our own intuition. And that's also how a lot of time trauma then is created. It's all these intense feelings that are not processed, they're not felt, and then they bottle up and create this blockage. So it's very important to give some time to yourself and some inner space for these feelings to be felt. So for me, I've been experiencing a lot of grief about what's happening in the world, and fear and upset, frustration, but especially grief has been very helpful for me to let myself feel it fully, feel the loss of some of my ideas or some of my expectations. I feel the grief for all the people who have died, that are going to die. It's been really important, and I feel like as that grief is felt, it actually opens up energy for my own ability to cope and to take action, to arise. So I want to offer some questions for you that you can contemplate around this idea of meaning and what's happening, and again in your personal life and a wider context. One is, who are you? I mean, really, who are you? Not the job title, not the hairstyle or the demographic age, or but who are you? And I really want to invite you to engage with this question and to shed a lot of the things that might come to mind as who are you, that maybe you will still be the same person if all those things changed. And my invitation is to go deep, deep to the root of your being, something that's beyond, this time and place, that timeless source of being that is inside of you. And rest with it. And also feel how it shows up and engages with the world. So the question of who are you, and you can take it however you want, but that would be the first question. The second question, I'm looking at my notes here for once. What is something bigger than you that you want to devote your time to? Okay, something bigger than you, something that's not just you. So it might be your family, it might be a project, it might also be a value, like peace, for example, okay, or democracy. What is something bigger than you that you like to devote time to? Because sometimes, in order for us to transcend all that is unsettling, uncertain, difficult, challenging at the moment, is for us to go higher. And I mean higher in the sense of really have a higher perspective and seeing what are we here to build, to contribute to create. What is something we're, you know, you know how when you're fully immersed in something you like, you forget about, I don't know, being hungry, or the time going by, or anything else that usually might occupy your focus. This is what I'm inviting you to do, just at a much higher level. What are you present to? Both as what's happening in your environment, in your life, on a bigger scale, but also your feelings. What are you present to? Like I mentioned, it's been really helpful for me to be present to my grief, and not try to suppress it and not try to ignore it, but actually feel it fully. When we ignore or suppress or try to close our eyes and overlook what actually is present, we really block ourselves, including our ability to deal with it. What possibilities can you imagine? I'm a big believer, and this has helped me many times in my life where it was really scary. I'm a big believer of the saying of spring always comes after winter. There's light after darkness, or dawn comes after the darkest hour, or something like that, right? I really believe in that, and I feel like it can be a really helpful and hopeful thing to remember. And sometimes we call in the light with our imagination, and we call it the change. We make the change happen through our imagination and hard work. But the first thing is we have to see the possibilities. So what are the possibilities right now that you can imagine? What are the possibilities that are already there all around you, but you've been overlooking them because you were so caught up in everything, or because you were blocking yourself so much, right? So really some time with giving space and time to your imagination, to imagining possibilities, and take action, right? Take action if it makes sense, if you feel called to. Of course, none of this has to say it's just a question. You might, my hope is that you get inspired, and then something happens in real life, like you take action to move you forward in your career change, or to make a change in a positive way as you feel called to. And the last invitation is to really read about, or even talk to, if it's somebody that you can talk to, people who have been through some great trials and tribulations and challenges, and who have gone through those times in a way that to you is inspiring and empowering. Okay, it can be somebody from history, or it can be somebody, as I said, alive right now, maybe somebody you know, but really somebody that embodied some of the qualities that you would like to call forth within yourself. I know for myself, a few years ago, something that really, really helped me was to dive in deeper into Gandhi's teachings. If you've been following me for a while, you know there was a time where I mentioned that quite a bit, because even though I was always drawn and I always enjoyed Gandhi's teachings, there were really 2 or 3 years where I felt it was really nourishing and important for me to dive deeper into those teachings, and helpful in a transformative personal way. So what qualities, what values do you feel called, not think, but feel called to embody, to bring forth within yourself? It can be bravery, it can be peace, it can be resilience, it can be imagination, it can be power, it can be adventure, it can be compassion. I don't know, there's so many possibilities. But maybe there's somebody you can learn from and be inspired by, who's been there before. I'm gonna leave you with this. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment or send me an email. I love to hear, what you get. I love to hear what you get out of this. And don't forget, if you want to learn more about the work I do with people who want to change careers but are not sure what they want to do next, and with people that want to do work that they love, you can always find my website at repurposeyourpurpose.com. Until next time.